Namaste. Welcome, and come to meet me in the seated position. For some of us, sitting down on the mat is not always accessible right at the beginning of our practice. So feel free to sit in a chair or prop yourself up against the wall. It's great to have a blanket underneath your hips or a large cushion, something that would lift the hips up a little bit higher, allowing the knees and the thighs to drop down, creating a little bit more of an accessible position for you. Now, I'm sitting with my legs pulled right up against me. It's taken me a long time to get my hips open enough to allow that to happen. So feel free to sit in a way that just works for you and your body. Sometimes crossing ankles, sometimes crossing shins, sometimes just taking your feet out nice and wide is a little bit easier to stay in this seated posture. And give yourself an opportunity to let go of all of the things that might be happening in the world around us so that we can take our time to ourselves. Now, I'm going to close my eyes, and the invitation is to allow maybe a gaze to turn downward, to fix on an item that isn't moving, or like me, to close your eyes. And we allow ourselves to do that, to let the rest of the world on the other side of these four walls just drop away. So we welcome ourselves to the mat by removing the external distractions, allowing our internal awareness and attention to focus on the internal landscape. Now you'll notice that when we close our eyes and we become still in the body, the mind is still busy. That is the nature of the mind, to be busy and distracted. And when we come to sitting still, the mind often feels like it has gotten busier. And so as we come to the practice and recognize that it will take a few moments to settle, just like a glass of water that has been disturbed, you will find yourself transitioning back and forth, traveling between the external distractions, the things that you were doing prior to this or the things that you will be doing after this, and this internal awareness of the busyness. We give ourselves permission. We give ourselves permission to be in our bodies, to be in our experiences, to be on the mat, to be in this moment, but also to recognize that there is busyness, distractions, tugging at your attention. And so you will find yourself distracted. You will find your mind wandering. You'll find yourself going through your to-do lists. And that's okay. So giving yourself permission to recognize, and that awareness of the busyness of our own internal landscape is something that we will allow ourselves to be witness to. So giving yourself permission to stand back and observe. If we give ourselves permission to stand back and observe, it's like when we're lying on the grass on a beautiful sunny day watching the clouds go by. Now, we can't climb on board those clouds, but we do notice them. We notice their shapes. And some of those shapes are interesting. Some of them are scary. Some of them we'll be curious about. But if we watch a cloud long enough, we understand that the cloud will change and it will drift away. And so if we allow the attention to be aware of the same qualities of our thoughts, we recognize that some of them are interesting. We might be curious about some of them are scary, but that they shift and change and they also drift away. And so our capacity to stand back as witness, to observe this recognition, gives us that little bit of distance, that little bit of space that we crave from our thoughts. And so allowing your attention to move from the busyness of the external world to our internal landscape and recognize the busyness there, we move from a place of compassion, kindness. No need to change, fix, or judge. Our observations are simple statements of fact. I am thinking about. I am aware of this. Now, as we come to our asana practice, let's allow ourselves to be aware of many things other than just our thoughts. So what are we coming in with physically? Maybe we notice a cranky knee, a sticky shoulder. We might have a headache, back a little tender. Or maybe we just had a beautiful spa treatment and we feel fabulous. Again, these observations are simple statements of fact. And so, on the mat, we observe, we become aware. We might notice that we're holding some tension in the body, so maybe give ourselves a little permission to let go some of that tension. We recognize probably around our neck and shoulders is where we mostly hold tension. Oftentimes just noticing it is an opportunity, gives us this, oh yes, and we tend to drop the shoulders. But we're going to do a little bit more than that so we can release a little more of that tension. So let's take a deep breath, inhale through your nostrils. Fill up, fill up, fill up, as big a breath as you can, letting the shoulders ride up if that's what they want to do. And then take a big exhale. Make some noise. Now just breathe organically here for a few moments, and you might notice that the tension out of the neck and shoulders has been somewhat released. Well, there's probably a little more to let go. So let's take another breath. Inhale through the nose. Maybe letting the shoulders ride up if that's what you want to do. But then a big sigh, make some noise, let it go. And we might notice that as a nice, beautiful release of tension around that neck and shoulders. Now we know that we're holding tension elsewhere in the body. So we're going to meet on our backs. Feel free to take the cushion or blanket out from underneath your backside and place it underneath your head. Now, if you're putting something underneath your head, you want to be placing it under just your head and your neck. So it's not under your shoulders. And it doesn't allow for your chin to be tucking in or lifting up. There's a neutral position with your chin. Right? So the back of your neck is nice and long, it's supported, and your chin is neutral. Right? And so go ahead and move around and make any adjustments you need to make. We're going to take our feet nice and wide to the outside edges of the mat and let the knees drop against each other. So the knees are resting against each other with the feet nice and wide. This is an active rest pose. This is a beautiful active rest for your back, for your hip flexors, and for the tension in your body. And then once you feel like you can settle for a few moments, let one hand rest on your low belly, so below your belly button, and the other hand rest above your belly, so on your heart. As we come to lying here on the mat, often our back is very grateful for this position. You can feel the body sort of settling in. We're going to release a little bit more tension in the same way we did when we were in the seated posture. We're going to draw the breath in through the nostrils. Take a deep, deep breath in, fill up. Exhale, noisy sigh. Just let it go. Letting go of any tension that might be making you feel like you were hovering above the earth. And sometimes we didn't even notice that we were feeling that way until we exhale and drop down and connect to the earth a little more. So we might find that we need to do that again. Let's take another breath, inhale through the nose. Exhale, big sigh. And you might notice the ribs underneath your hand dropping back down towards the earth underneath you. Some of the tension between your eyebrows and your jaw, release. Maybe your legs drop against each other and just feel more comfortable. And of course, there's your neck and your shoulders. And we're just allowing ourselves to lay still here for a moment and letting the body soften. Now, our nervous system is often in flight or fight mode. And the culture we live in encourages tension and very little time for any release of that tension. So that flight or fight syndrome happens without us even recognizing it. And we stay in that fight or flight space without noticing it. We kind of live there. And living in even the low level chronic tension is hard on our bodies, hard on our nervous system. We never get a chance to be relieved from that. And so these deep breaths are really important as they help the nervous system settle down. When the nervous system settles down, we move out of that fight or flight syndrome And so many beautiful physiological things happen when we do. There's a softening of the eyebrows, there's a softening of the breath, there's a deepening of the breath. As we're allowing ourselves to be still here and noticing the breath, let's take the breath and understand how the breathing is the most integral part of our asana practice, our yoga practice. Because nothing happens without breath, nothing. From the very first breath you take when you're born, the last breath you take when you die, and every single breath in between. All have an effect on our bodies, our minds, and our nervous systems. So we're going to breathe a little bit deeper here and a little bit wider. So as we're recognizing our breathing, allow the breath to become a little bit wider. As we breathe in through the nose, we exhale from the nostrils as well. Now, as we're attending to the sense of ourselves breathing, let's focus our attention only on the inhalation. And the exhalation will just happen on its own. So go ahead and relax your jaw. And as we inhale, we're going to inhale through the nostrils so that we can warm the breath up, moving into the body. And moving it through the nostrils means that any particulate matter will be caught. Now, as we come to the sense of ourselves inhaling, we're breathing in that oxygen. That vital life force energy, it moves into our nostrils and then down into our lungs. But we often breathe in a way, especially when the body is still in quiet, in a very short and shallow way, often imperceptible. So we're going to make it a little bit more perceptible, a little bigger, a little wider. So as you breathe in, let's see if we can draw in a little bit more air. And then exhale, just let it be released on its own. Again, inhaling, let the breath move down into the lungs. And with the breath moving down into the lungs, allow enough breath to move down so that you can feel your hands moving. Now, let a little bit more air come in and feel the breath move your hands, and it's the volume of breath. The amount of oxygen you bring in. Feel it wide in the lungs, the ribs, and the chest. Feel it expand the belly and soften the shoulders. Now this deeper, wider breathing allows more oxygen to move into the lung tissue. So as we breathe in, more oxygen moves into the lung tissue. We're able to feed and nourish ourselves in a much deeper way. Filling the lungs, inhaling, And as we breathe in and fill the lungs, our minds get saturated, our blood system gets saturated with oxygen. Drop your body down onto the earth by letting go of the tension between your eyebrows. Unsquint your eyes and unclench your jaw. Release the tension in your throat and your neck. Drop the ribs, the chest, and the shoulders down onto the mat underneath you. Let your chin drop towards your chest just a little bit more. Allow your fingers into a natural curl. Soften your belly and your backside. Let your arms and your legs get super heavy. Let yourself drop down and just breathe. And you might ask, how do you do this? Just breathe. In this shape, there is nothing to do but breathe. You might allow your thoughts to travel through your awareness, just like the clouds. Letting them drift in and then on and out. Very gently now, call your attention back to the space that you're occupying. Recognize that you've drifted away. And that's okay. As we call ourselves back, come slowly and gently recognizing where you are, maybe identifying a detail, a fragrance, a texture, a sound. And then take a moment to check in with yourself. And you might notice nothing at all, and that's okay. Remember, your experience is the valid one. Notice your state of mind. And then recognize how you're breathing. And our first movements can be maybe that of a deeper breath or blinking your eyes. Maybe wiggle fingers and toes. Moving gently and slowly, roll over onto your side and pause for a moment. Gently pressing yourself up onto your hip, once again pausing for a moment, taking your time, being kind to yourself. We're going to come back to a seated posture. You might grab your blanket, your bolster, your cushion. You might prop yourself up against a wall or even sit in a chair. As we come back to an upright posture, we'll draw our hands together into the space in front of our heart. Maybe close your eyes once again. Allow yourself to stay in your practice just a few more moments. You might notice that you're already rushing off. Giving yourself permission to take this time for yourself. Claiming it. Being selfish. Because if we recognize the word selfish as a compound word, self and fish, feeding yourself, that's very different than being self-absorbed or self-centered. Claiming this space and time for ourselves means that when we come back and join the rest of our day, we come back calmer, stronger, a little more compassion, a little more awareness, a little less tension. I want to thank you for sharing your practice with me today. I am truly touched and honored that you have chosen to share your time with me. I'm going to chant a single Om to seal the practice. Of course, you are welcome to chant with me. And of course, you are welcome to just sit back and receive. If you are chanting with me, we'll take a deep breath, inhale here. Once again, thank you for sharing your practice with me today. Namaskar.